Somebody put together a list called "You Know It's Going to Be a Bad Day When." You know it's going to be a bad day. There are a few of those. These are a few of those indications of when you know it's going to be a bad day. You know it's going to be a bad day when you wake up face down on the pavement. When you call suicide prevention and they put you on hold. When you see a 60 Minutes news team waiting in your office. When your birthday cake collapses from the weight of the candles. When you turn on the news and they're showing emergency routes out of the city. When your twin sister forgot your birthday. When your boss tells you not to bother to take off your coat. When the bird singing outside your window is a buzzard. When your income tax check bounces. When you put both contact lenses in the same eye. Or when your car horn gets stuck when you're driving and you wind up behind a group of Hell's Angels bikers. You know, we all get those days from time to time, don't we? And the problem comes when the days turn into weeks. And the weeks turn into months. And even when the months turn into years. That's when things can have a tendency to get discouraging. When that much discouragement comes, it starts to take a toll on our faith. Often our faith begins to suffer. Not the faith, but our faith. You see, the faith does not ever come lacking. It never falters, but our faith can lack sometimes. We begin to waver. We begin to wonder. Our faith feels like it's in a drought. Has anybody ever been there? You got caught up into something or some things, and you were wondering, like, is my faith for real? Is my faith worth anything to me? We're not the first generation of believers to struggle with dryness in our faith. And today I want to talk about Elijah. Elijah is an interesting personality from the Old Testament book of Kings. And hopefully we're going to get a glimpse of his life of faith that will encourage us in ours. Elijah may have been a hero of the faith. Many have looked upon him as almost supernatural. But the book of James in the New Testament tells us that Elijah was a man just like us. That is, Elijah was human. He wasn't perfect. Elijah had flaws. But he also had a faith that can inspire each one of us. And the first glimpse we get of Elijah is in 1 Kings chapter 17. Just as a drought, no rain, no dew was about to hit Israel. By the time Elijah entered the scene, the land that God had promised to his people had been divided. Because of ego and power struggles, the 12 tribes of Israel had fallen out. Remember, they were all together. When they came into the promised land, they were united, they were together. But ego and power struggles got in and they split up. The 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, settled in the south with their own king and their capital at Jerusalem. The remaining 10 tribes settled in the north with their own king and capital at Samaria. It was to this northern group that Elijah preached. Elijah, the man of God, was assigned by God to go to King Ahab, evil King Ahab, and he said there would be no rain in the land for years. Then he took off and hid by a lonely brook where he was able to drink water and he was fed by ravens. But if you notice the story there, eventually the whole land faced the drought and his brook dried up too. That's a thing I think that has baffled many Christians throughout the ages, that while I am a child of God, while I am following God, while I'm trying to obey God's directives, the same stuff that happens to the godly godless people happens to us too. Now, Elijah was in bad shape. He was in as bad a shape as the rest of the land. That's how it looked anyhow. Have you ever felt like that way? You go to church, you try to pay your little money, you try to sing in the choir, you try to participate in this, you try to do what the Lord says, and look like it's like that old song on Hee Haw that I like to talk about all the time. If it weren't for bad luck, you'd have no luck at all. Every now and then it looks like God has lost your address. But watch this, watch this, watch this. Even in the middle of this drought, Elijah was not forgotten. You see, God knew exactly what was going on and how He was going to take care of Elijah. It's good to remember that even when you're going through those dry times in your life, God still sees you, God still loves you, and God has a plan for you, even if you don't know it yet. Do I need to say that one again? God has something in store for you, even though you may not know it, even though you may not see it, even though you may not be able to embrace it. God has something for you. Now, the question that naturally, damn things going acting up again. Y'all know we got to get a new PA system here, so when I actually get a little more money, we still got to get these things, but we're going to do it all. Anyway, but let me go on. In spite of it all, just act like you don't hear it. The question that naturally comes before us is, why did God send a drought? Somebody go back there right quick and cut it off and wait a couple of seconds, then cut it back on, maybe we'll lose this. There's enough of us, y'all can probably hear me for a second. Why was there a dry time? In the big picture, this was a punishment on the land because of the king and the sins of the people. In 1 Kings chapter 16 and verse 30, it says that Ahab the king did more evil than all the kings before him. And in biblical tradition, his wife Jezebel was probably the most wicked woman ever to live. It appears that God sent the drought to punish the king and the queen. That sounds unfair to all the regular citizens of the land, but things really aren't that much different today, does it? Ahab and Jezebel were in the forefront of the apostasy, but we are given no indication that the people put up much resistance to remain faithful to the true God. You see, we can sit around and we can complain about this government entity and that government entity, this politician, this person, that person, but unless and until the people of God stand up and stand on the promises and the covenant requirements of God, God looks at all of us as being just as guilty. You see, even though our leaders may be doing the wrong thing, if we're following right behind them, we're no better than they are. I get a witness here. I'm almost through here. Nations are still paying. Nations are still paying for the sins and the mistakes of political leaders. Cultures are still paying for the misdirection and sins of spiritual leaders. How many people are paying some awful price because we individually have sinned and misled somebody? Somebody's wondering now why my children are all out of kilter. It doesn't happen all the time, but when you were young and raising them, and when you were acting a fool, they were watching you and paying attention to what you did and patterning their lives after you. Now they've gotten grown. You want them to be holy just like you are. Your mistakes, your misdirections have led them. This country is wondering why everybody hates us when we've mistreated everybody throughout the years. We wonder why they hate us. That's why they hate us. Each one of us has gone through some hard times because of other people. On the flip side, each one of us has made somebody else suffer because of our own sins and mistakes. No one can really point fingers at anybody here. As for Elijah, why was he suffering? Why was he going through a drought too? Why did his own brook dry up?